Hello and welcome to the third episode of Let Me Explain. This is a special one because it's something new that I haven't done on the channel actually ever. We are outside, ladies and gentlemen. We are outside in a field of dreams in which you see the attempt of young entrepreneur Amit Kukrasia trying to chase his dreams. Tristan, what's wrong? What do we got to do? This is what chasing dreams looks like. This is what we got to do. Put it in the pocket. Okay. Do you want to zoom in on the camera? You sure? It's up to you. Do we need to zoom in a little bit? Just a little bit? Just a little bit. There we go. I think that's perfect. That's perfect. All right. Let me know, guys, if it's out of focus. I can't really see it too much because it's a little dark outside. So I have you guys on my phone because I can see the phone here. But we're outside today. And this is one of the parts of this Let Me Explain series that's really cool. We're going to be doing it in a lot of different places, which is fun, right? We're not just going to be staying in the apartment all day. And as a result of that, we'll be able to kind of go to different places and talk about different things. For those that are new to the series, this is the series in which I talk about my startup, Audia, and all the things implicating the philosophies and ideas and business aspects of my startup. And the real reason we're doing this is to get a lot more content of me speaking about the startup as if I'm presenting it to an audience, whether there's 12 people, 15 people, 12,000 people. One day there will be many, many people listening. And right now there might not be, but that's okay because the same level of energy I'm going to be speaking about to 12 people, I will be speaking about one day to 12,000. Hopefully, if that happens. Now, today we've got a lot to talk about. And the thing I want to talk about today that's going to be the most important subject in this live is this concept of an impression, right? What does it mean to have a first impression? Now, some of you have probably been in relationships before. Some of you have probably liked somebody before. And usually there's this saying that, you don't want to screw up your first impression because the first impression is everything. So the first time you find someone, the first time you get to say hi to someone, or the first time someone gets to know a little about you, whether it's at a job or even if it's in a romantic setting, that impression matters because that is the first time they get a conceptualization of who you are as an individual, and then they determine how they think of you, how they conceptualize you, what they actually care about when it comes to you being in their life. I want to talk today in the context of content discovery about what it means to actually have an impression. Because see, this is the one thing that I believe most audio companies have failed at, which is that they have been abysmal at being able to give creators impressions. Now, what is an impression? Impression, very simply put, is the amount of times you see a piece of content in your feed. So when you see a thumbnail pop up of me and me having some weird face talking about some idea, and you get to read the title and thumbnail and kind of put those two things together, that's an impression. That impression really matters. Now, whether you're a content creator and you find this useful, that's important. But also if you're a consumer, I think you're going to find this important because the way you view social media, the way you do things online is all oriented around the impressions of pieces of content you see. Think about a newspaper, back in the day when you got a newspaper and you were going through all the different advertisements and like different articles. These are all impressions that the newspaper is giving to these pieces of content. Social media platforms are no different. At the end of the day, these platforms have limited amounts of content. They also have limited amounts of user engagement time trying to view that content. And their job is to figure out how can we show the most amount of content to a user that is engaging enough for them to click on it in order for them to spend their time and consume the content. And that comes down to giving them impressions. And so the reason impressions are so important, we're going to talk about it from a business perspective, from a technical perspective, from a content perspective, and from a philosophical perspective, is that if you are a creator and you don't get impressions, you are dead. You are irrelevant. You have no shot of entering into the consciousness of the mainstream masses. Now, why do I say this? Because I was a creator years ago where I never got impressions. I never got the ability to even show up in someone's feed. And I basically never got discovered. When I started my first podcast back in 2020, shout out to my boy, David, Absurd Academics. We killed that thing, even though Spotify didn't show it to anybody. We would upload a podcast to Spotify, Apple, all the big companies. And I would go into my back end analytics to try to understand how the platform is taking the content and distributing it. Right? Because in my perspective, I was like, well, if you post content to a platform, the platform then has an obligation to kind of like show it to some people, right? I'm not saying go give me 1 billion views. I'm just saying, like, is the platform in the best interest of me as a content creator? Because I'm giving them, remember, you are giving them all of your hard work, your blood, your sweat, your tears, your money, your time, everything to this platform. They should show a little bit of gratitude by showing it to some people, right? Giving them a chance to potentially click on it. And the reason I started Audia primarily in October 2020 was I was dumbfounded by the fact that there was simply no mechanism for people to find attention, to get attention, and to get people to actually care about what you were saying. And it was honestly like it was one of the craziest things in the world to me. I was uploading these pieces of audio onto Spotify, and they were giving it no impressions. What do I mean by that? I literally mean they were not taking my content and putting it in the feeds of other people. And so me and David, we're working so hard. We're trying to do what we can do, right? We're pumping out this content, doing everything we can do. And the content is not going anywhere. It's being stuck on this feed in Spotify, Apple, Overcast, Stitcher, all of these guys. And, you know, this presents to me an existential problem. Now, what was the existential problem? The problem was I was putting in all this hard time, work, and effort into building this content in audio format, right? It's a good podcast. I thought it had, you know, decent conversational skills, all of that stuff. And it's just stuck on Spotify. It's just stuck on Apple. It's not going anywhere. That's when I realized the way content is distributed on audio platforms is not up to date with the way content is distributed on modern media platforms. And that, my friends, is the gap in the marketplace. And that's why I think Audia can become $1 billion company. Because if we're going to keep using legacy forms of distribution in order for audio content to get discovered, well, guess what's going to happen? Audio content is not going to get discovered. The same millions of kids out there trying to make a podcast, just like me and my friend did 2 years ago, are going to get nilch on these larger platforms, not because we suck at marketing and not because our content's not good enough, but because these platforms aren't giving us the chance to get an impression. And that's what this conversation is about. And we're going to talk about the philosophical stuff in a little bit, but this is about the chance. This is about just the opportunity to have the ability for someone to even, again, have a chance, the probability that they'll be able to see your content. So what I mean by this, going deeper into it, is if you go to the back-end analytics of Spotify and you try to see, hey, how many impressions did my podcast get? They don't have a statistic to measure that. Apple, they don't have a statistic to measure that. And this right here is when I was like, holy shit, there's a market opportunity. There's a massive market. If you are a creator and you create any type of long-form content that can be valuable just as much as it is for your video, as your audio, meaning your voice can make up a majority of the experience of the content, you should listen to what I'm saying. If you are distributing that content on platforms that are mainstream because they have the brand recognition, which I don't blame you for, right? You got to upload it there, but that content isn't actually going anywhere, then you need to ask yourself why. And when I asked myself why in October 2020, I ended up coming up with a startup idea, because that's how dumbfounded I was by the fact that there was not mainstream distribution. If you go to their backend analytics, there's no impression statistic, which means, what does that tell about the platform? What that tells about the platform is that they're not even trying to get your content out there. Simple enough. They're not even trying to show your shit to more people. If they don't have an impressions statistic or analytic within your back end for your audio, that means it's not going anywhere. Downloads, doesn't fucking matter. Listen time doesn't matter. What matters is how many times are you giving me the chance to get into someone's feed? Because as we talked about many, many times, content discovery comes from people seeing you inside of a feed. If you are not in their feed, you're not getting discovered. You are irrelevant. You are dead. If you don't have advertising money to get into people's feed, you are irrelevant and you are dead, which means if the content is not organically showing your shit to people in the feed, you are irrelevant and you are dead. Which is why I realized why our podcast wasn't getting momentum. We weren't showing up in anyone's audio feed. And I was like, this is crazy. The one time we started to get some listens, and again, we're going to go deeper into why impressions are so important from a technical perspective here, is when we made a TikTok that, guess what, got about 3-4 million impressions. And as a result of that, it started converting people to click on our link and consume our content on Spotify. So the logical question then becomes, does that mean every piece of long form content on the internet that is not a video that has the benefit of YouTube's algorithm, so audio content, is all of that content at the whims of then being recorded as a video, clipped up into this rat race dopamine short form video type of content that we're creating right now. So it's kind of ironic. And then pushed into as many feeds as possible in order for it to get discovery. I think that's not the way the world should work over the next decade. And if that is how things happen, that's fine, but there should be additional forms of discovery in relationship to the short form dopamine rat races in order for content to get discovered. And so this is kind of why impressions really matter. Again, to summarize, I made a podcast 2 years ago, uploading it to the major platforms, realized not only is it not getting traction, they're not even giving it a chance to get traction. And if you're an audio creator right now, whether you're a musician or a podcaster, you probably relate to this right now. You're creating content and it doesn't even have the chance to get discovered. It doesn't even have the chance to show up in the playlist. It doesn't even have a chance to show up in someone's feed. And you got to ask yourself the question, why? Because everyone wants to discover new content. I don't care who you are. You want to discover new things. When you go on Netflix, you're not looking to watch the same movie that you watched 10 years ago. You're looking to find something new. And if you don't find something new, then you leave, right? So these platforms can't stay relevant unless they give you new shit. But they're choosing, in the context of Spotify, to give you $2 billion worth of exclusive new shit. And a lot of that shit, quite frankly, is trash. It is. And so if they're not going to trust mainstream, if they're going to trust mainstream media and not give creators the ability to distribute their content, I believe that creates a market opportunity. And that market opportunity is going to be for a startup like mine. Let me go through the comments right now. Ray, what's up? Philip Rizzo, what's up? John Surge, look at my 54 view podcast will blow up in 100 years when the algorithm decides it's worth to blow up. Listen, Amit, I'm worried about those effects those power lines are having. It's almost supercharged your thoughts. That was a good joke. Shout out to 31 people being here. Thank you for being here on your lunch break and watching me discuss old things about startups and impressions. Okay, so we talked about some of the technical elements about impressions. Now what we are going to talk about here is the philosophical reason why impressions matter and why this is so fundamentally important to me. In relationship to Audia. So what is Audia? Audia is a platform that says, look, if we can create a network, a centralized distribution mechanism that allows audio content to get impressions, and this is a really, really important thing to understand. Audio content does not get impressions. Why? Because the very nature of an impression is symbiotic with the concept of something being visual. Right? Impression, you're seeing something. Even impressionist art, right? It's all like it's art. You're watching something, you're seeing something. So when we think about audio, we don't think about impressions in the same sense about how we think about video. We're going to talk about advertising in a little bit. Advertisement, like literally ad agencies base their entire philosophy of reach and distribution based on this stat called impressions. So impressions is how many times someone sees something, right? In audio, we don't have that. We don't have this whole concept of how many times does someone see something. Now, what if we did? That's my question. What if we did? What if we had a statistic in audio where we could measure how many times someone sees a piece of audio? Now, that is contradictory in and of itself because, how can you see a piece of audio? Well, to me, I think it's very simple, and we kind of figured it out. If you give an audio piece of content a thumbnail and a title that is hyper-specific to the 10 to 15, 20 minutes of audio packaged behind that thumbnail and title, you can show that package, that audio idea, as an impression on a feed. And, this is a really hard problem because I was listening to the VP of engineering at Spotify kind of talk about this issue, and it's not easy. It's not easy. Podcasts are currently distributed right now in RSS feeds. So most people don't actually use thumbnails and titles to speak about their podcast or to showcase their podcast. As a result of that, it is very hard for mainstream distribution platforms to then show you impressions of content that not only they don't have control over, but that's not really hyper specific to the piece of content, right? Because they're just going to show you the same logo and the same title every time, right? It's going to be the same exact, like the Amit Kukreja podcast. I pick a basic logo, and every time I upload a new episode, that thumbnail around, my logo around the podcast becomes the pseudo thumbnail. YouTube doesn't do that. YouTube says, hey, every time you upload a video, give it a specific thumbnail, give it a specific title. Guess what we're going to do? You're going to put it into this big ass machine, right, that we've created. And within this machine, we are going to analyze every intricate detail of that thumbnail, of that title, and we're going to try to show it. We're going to give it impressions to as many people on the planet that we think would be interested in it. And we're going to then statistically analyze how many times people engage with those pieces of content. And then we will decide, to show it to more and more people. My value proposition around the startup that I'm building is, what if you just did that for audio? Right? Like literally, what if you just did that for audio? How big could that be? What if you built a big ass machine? What if you said, hey, upload your audio content with a specific thumbnail and title into this machine, and we are going to do the one thing that the other audio platforms have failed to do, which is give it impressions. Put the content inside of people's feeds. The way this works is if you make the feed scrollable, people want to scroll, want to discover content, which I don't think is the hardest thing to do in the world. I've talked about this on episodes before, but algorithms, right? You make interesting thumbnails and titles, you put them in the feed. If I am scrolling through a feed and there is a thumbnail and title that says Drake versus Michael Jackson, who's the greatest artist of all time, with a cool Drake picture, cool Michael Jackson picture with that title, I will click instantaneously. I don't care if it's a video. I don't care if it's a piece of audio content. I don't care if it's a short form video. I'm consuming it because I care about that debate, Drake versus Michael Jackson. And I have my thoughts on that debate, but I really care about that. And so I'm clicking on that. If there is a philosophical analysis of the myth of Sisyphus, which is one of the greatest stories of all time written by philosopher Albert Camus, and that shows up on any feed, whether it's thumbnail title, whether it's short form video, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it may be, I am clicking because I'm interested in that piece of content. So here's my basic argument. If you made a feed with all these thumbnails and titles that represented audio content beneath the thumbnail and title, and people were scrolling and they scrolled through and they found their Drake versus Michael Jackson piece of content or their myth of Sisyphus analysis content, will they click? The answer is yes, because all of us want to consume shit that we want to consume. And it doesn't matter what medium it's going to be in. If we care about it, we are going to consume it. Simply enough, if you could get creators to recognize that there's a market opportunity to get their stuff in front of those people so that they can find the Drake versus MJ, the myth of Sisyphus stuff, then people are going to click. It's just that simple. And creators are going to get a benefit as a result of people clicking on that. And so that is the theory of why impressions matter from a technical perspective and how Audia is trying to build that out. Right now, to date, we have given over 2 million impressions on the platform. Let me say that again. If you're a creator listening to this, our platform has given 2 million impressions since September of 2022. Which means that if you have the ability to post your content on our platform and access impressions for free. Now, let's talk about the business of impressions. Impressions are incredibly important, but they're hard to get. Why are they hard to get? Because everyone is competing to get them. So I post my Drake versus Michael Jackson video into YouTube, right? I'm hoping YouTube says, here are all the Drake people, here are all the Michael Jackson people, here are all the music people, here are all the people that care about debates, here are all the people that care about philosophical analyses in relationship to music. We're going to take your thumbnail and title and blast it to as many people as possible, and let's see if they click on it. Remember, they might not see it optimally, right? An impression is, it's either a thumbnail on your screen or it's a thumbnail on the side. It's a thumbnail in your up next. You might just scroll right past it. YouTube doesn't care what type of version of the impression they show you. They just want to know, and they just want you to know that they did try. So impressions aren't perfect, but at least you got to commend the platform for trying to give content a chance to become discovered. The reason impressions are so competitive is because everyone's trying to get impressions. People talk about everyone trying to get views. Before you get views, you have to get an impression. This is the thing I think a lot of content creators don't think about. It's like before you get someone to click, they have to see the thing they're clicking on at scale, right? You can't send your video to a group chat of 5 million people. That doesn't work. If you want to get 5 million views, 10, 15, 20 million people have to see the video because not all of them are going to click, and you have to get a click-through rate conversion on those impressions you got in order to get those quote-unquote 5 million views. So the impression is, to me, more worthwhile than the view because it signals that if you get more impressions, the byproduct of that is you will eventually get more views if the algorithm is giving you more impressions. However, getting impressions is difficult because everyone is vying for impressions. So how do you solve this problem in the audio space? 2 things. Number one, you build a platform that actually gives impressions. That's Audia, right? That's kind of what we did. Second is you make sure that there is an imbalance of supply and demand of content on the platform, which means you just have to create a platform that's new. It's not big. It's not saturated. It's not filled with like 17,000 people trying to analyze music every single day. It's not filled with 55,000 sports broadcasters trying to get their name out there every day. And this is the fucking bull case, bro. This is like this is like that Wall Street bull is not more bullish on this than I am right here. There are so many creators across the world that need impressions, that need their content to get a little bit more reach. And on the mainstream platforms that exist, it is unbelievably hyper competitive to try to get asymmetrical distribution and organic reach, because those platforms have way too much content. So they don't need to give you that much reach. On Audia, we're like, hey, the door's open, come through. It's an open house. And you know what? You can buy the whole house if you want. You can upload as much as you want, and we will reward you with unlimited and asymmetrical forms of reach and opportunity in this time window. Maybe 5 years down the line, that's not the same because we're going to be too big. But right now, we're not big at all. And so if you're a creator and this comes across your feed and you have audio content, you honestly should really think twice before you stop watching this. Because if you want to get distribution, you need to post your stuff in a place where there are more opportunities to get distribution, more opportunities to get impressions. That is Audia. That is Audia at the end of the day. And as a result of that, I think there's just going to be a better opportunity for more people to ultimately get discovered. I see the joke. He's always impressive. Is that the joke around impressions? I don't know if you meant to make that joke, Jason, but there is a joke there. So that's really important. Now let me talk a little bit about my story here and how I got discovered. And this is why I'm so anti the bigger audio platforms that exist today when it comes to content discovery. Again, a lot of you guys know me because of the stock analysis videos I've done, particularly on Palantir. YouTube has given me impressions in order to get discovered. They've given over 47 million impressions since last year. The video I posted last night that got 11,000 views in a day, I didn't expect it to do that well, 85,000 impressions. That means 85,000 times that video was shown across the platform. I am not here today unless YouTube is showing my content and giving me more and more impressions. Now, here's a question for you. Do you guys think if I started the Palantir podcast on Spotify and I uploaded as much as I did on YouTube, that the platform of Spotify or Apple would be able to give me that many impressions, would be able to do that much work, right? Would they be able to actually show me 85,000 times when I upload a new podcast? The answer is no. And it's not because they can't. That's the point. I will not tolerate the argument that, YouTube's a video platform, Spotify's an audio platform, YouTube's bigger, Spotify's not as big. No, Spotify has 500 million people. What the hell are you talking about? You got 500 million people on this shit. You can give some impressions to your boy. You can take my shit and put it in front of people. You did not do that. They did not do, and the reason they did not do that is because they don't have the incentive structure to do that. YouTube does. And we're going to talk about incentive structures in a little bit. But the reason I'm here is because of impressions. Okay, the reason I'm here is because we were able to actually figure out how to get in front of people's feeds. If you don't get in the feed, you do not survive. You do not grow. You do not find an optimal path towards people finding your content and discovering the nature of your existence. You need to get into people's feeds if you're a content creator. You need to figure out how to show up when people are scrolling. And this is what leads to the sensationalism of content, right? This is why you see people doing outrageous things. And, we're out here in a field. We don't need to be, but I thought the setting is nice. It looks kind of nice. And, maybe you can you can say that's kind of sensational, but that's not as sensational as, tattooing your entire face and jumping on cars, right? So people needing to get into feeds is what feeds the attention economy today. If you could create a platform that allows more people to get in those feeds without over sensationalizing, because you were actually giving them mechanisms of discovery, I think you win. And so what YouTube did for me is they gave me more impressions. Apple, Spotify, and again, I did this in 2020. And as I said at the start of this keynote presentation, Spotify didn't do anything for my podcast. They didn't do it. TikTok is what allowed people to find the podcast, right? Like, how insane is that, bro? You're like a $25 billion company. Someone's uploading a piece of content to your platform and you're doing nothing with it. You're saying you're creator oriented. Get the fuck out of my face. And then this Chinese spyware app is showing my shit to more people than you are. It's like, what's going on here? Like, this is quite concerning for an American company that claims to say they're on the side of creators. And so that is why the argument is, let's create a different platform that has audio content audio content in the context of trying to get discovered, trying to get impressions. Because in order for me to have gotten the attention I've gotten today, I needed those impressions. There are a lot of people across the world, lawyers, tax consultants, poets, musicians, podcasters, comedians, all of these people trying to get more people to know who they are. And they need these platforms, just like I need these platforms, to facilitate the process of discovery by showing our content via the impressions that we've talked about for 50 minutes inside of people's feeds. And if audio platforms are not doing that, there is a wide open gap in the marketplace for you to do that. And that's why I'm so bullish on Audia every day. I'm like, no one else is doing that. No one else is doing. No one is doing what Audia is doing in the audio space. It's just that simple. And if you find one, name me the company. No one is doing it. And it's just like, well, if no one's doing it, it's because there's a structural problem in terms of how they do it. Obviously, it's hard to do it. But if you do it, you win. You really win. And that's not saying there's not competition for audio. Like, obviously, there's a lot of competitors, but no one's doing it exactly the way we need to do it. And, this goes into another thought I was thinking about the other day. You need to make sure that if you have a startup idea, it needs to be polarizing, right? It needs to be unbelievably polarizing. Why does it need to be polarizing? Because if everyone agrees that your idea is amazing, you've created a really bland, boring idea. It's like, we should create we should create something that makes sure that when you drink it, you don't die. Oh, water. Well, everyone believes in that idea, so it's not that interesting, right? It's like you created water. Let's put a lemon inside of the water. It's like, okay, it's like it's like a product that is universally loved by everyone at this day and age in 2023 has probably already been replicated many, many times. A product that is more divisive, right? You get 50% of people that say, oh shit, that can go to the moon. And you get other people like, that's crap. That's not going to do anything. That's what you're looking for. Because you don't want people to automatically agree with what you're saying. You want people to be really controversially skeptical about the nature of your idea, and over time for them to see, this could kind of make sense. And so in the context of the audio space, I think the objective truth for why Audia is correct is because no other audio platform on the planet is giving impressions. No other audio platform in the content has a feed in which people can actually find content in a way that allows them to upload based on keyword search metadata and actually show up in that feed, not the little stupid Discover feed that companies have said they've created and then they pump their $60 million exclusive podcast inside of that feed. That's not what I'm talking about. And that's why we win. The unconventional, sort of skeptical side of why Audia would win is more a question of execution. Can you build out the network effects that facilitate people to find and discover content and get them coming back every single day? That's the hard part. And I think that's more of the conventional skeptical part. The other skeptical part about the platform is, well, why can't other big platforms do this and then encompass this? And, the only big platform that I think will really encompass and do this is YouTube, because YouTube is the king. But everyone, is trying to go against YouTube. You don't need to necessarily destroy YouTube. No one's going to destroy YouTube. You just need a little bit of a differentiation from YouTube and see, can you scale that, and then do what you need to do. But outside of that, from a controversial skeptic perspective, I think, the idea makes a lot of sense. And now it's just a question of, can we execute around the idea? Okay, going to the chat. Pops found you on Twitter. See, and Twitter gave me impressions, and as a result of giving me impressions, that's how you found me. That's the most important thing. Amit, if I wanted to start my own startup, where should I start? Well, that's a good question, John. Okay, if you wanted to start your own startup, where should you start? I think first and foremost, the question is, you need to have such a deep-rooted philosophical explanation for why you want to start the startup, because it is so hard that it carries you to start it with the naivete you'll have in the beginning, thinking it's not going to be a big deal to do it, like I did, like everyone does. And it keeps you going through the really, really, really difficult times when, things get tough and things get very hard. Like, there's two motivations, right? Either people are like, I just want to create something really small and make some money off of it, and maybe it's like $1 million, $2 million company, whatever, but that's not really a startup. You can call that a startup, but that's not like a startup. When I'm talking startup, I'm talking about you want this thing to be used potentially by the entire world. And when you're going on a mission to create something as big as that, well, there needs to be a lot of things that have to happen in order for that to be executed. And so the biggest thing for me before you get into any of the other stuff, is like, do you care so deeply about the problem? Because if like I care very deeply about creators getting discovered. And the reason I care deeply about that is because I was not discovered for so long. I'm still not discovered by the masses, right? But I have a little bit more discovery. And that has changed my life. That has given me the level of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness that I could only dream of. Because I've been able to get my voice out there. Like, everyone wants to get their voice out there. Everyone wants a little bit of attention. Everyone wants the chance to like be seen as a thought leader in their niche, or someone who can speak influentially, even if they're just like shit posting. Everyone wants a little bit of attention. And the only way you get the attention is if the platforms curate you. And there's only a couple of platforms, right? So I care very deeply about creating an additional platform that facilitates discovery mechanisms for people, because that is ultimately what I think gives purpose and fulfillment in life. That's the level of depth I think you need to have with the problem you're trying to solve, or else you won't keep going, because it's just so hard. Like, it's so much easier to just get a job. It's so much easier to get a job. Like I could go become a product manager right now at some tech company, right? And like my day could literally be waking up, sending some emails, and literally I've talked to product manager friends. They're like, I send 3 messages in Slack all day, and then I just keep my work phone on me, and I go, like go have a spa day, right? Like, they don't do shit. And they're like, they kind of feel guilty about making all this money, because like, I'm not even doing anything for this money. That could be my life, quite frankly. And I think that could easily be my life, because it's a simple life. But the existential anxiety I would feel if that was my life would be profound. I mean, like, if my life was literally just wake up, do some stupid shit for some corporation that doesn't care about you, and then go work out and watch Netflix all day, like I would be in a bad spot, because life is limited, it is finite, and you're like, holy crap, I'm not really doing anything important. Now, that's just me, right? Some people can go away with that, and they can live their life. That's fine. It's everyone's different, but for me, I wouldn't be able to handle it. So the existential anxiety and the fear of not doing anything would be too strong. But that has to be strong enough for you to feel that there's a problem you can solve, in order for you to then go try to actually build a startup. That's kind of how I feel about it. Literally me trying to get into project management. Yeah, bro, like project management is so simple, right? It's not so simple. It's such an interesting concept to me, because I have friends who are product managers. And what is a product manager, right? You're just manage. I'm a fucking product manager. I manage my own damn product, right? And I talk to engineers, and I try to get them to understand my vision, and they need to execute it. And that's basically what you're doing inside of a really big corporation. It's just like it's do you care about the product? And the best way to manage a product is if you really care about it. And I really care about my own product, and that's why I'm doing it. And that also leads into this conversation around, as we're talking about impressions. And I'll talk about this a lot more in future episodes, but the ability to consistently get impressions. And how do you consistently get impressions? You have to figure out what you're creating. And this is, John, this is important. If you're making a startup, you're going to have to make content around the startup, right? You have to figure out how to get as many impressions on your startup, i.e. you, right? Or whatever content you're creating around the startup, in order for the startup to get discovered by more and more people. I mean, think about what people are saying about Tesla right now, right? People are saying that Tesla should not cut their prices, therefore lowering their margins. They should do advertising. Why is Tesla cutting their prices? Because Tesla's like, hey, we want to compete with the competition. And, if our car is cheaper, we know our car is better. So why wouldn't anyone buy our car? The, Wall Street folks are like, no, keep your margins high, because you have the best margins of the automotive business. Just advertise. And to me, that's the craziest thing in the world, because, and I know it's naive to say this, but I'm like, doesn't everyone know that Tesla exists? What do you mean advertising? Like, Tesla's Tesla. It's like Apple, right? It's like, no, that's not the case. There are people that don't know who Elon Musk is. There are people that don't know what Tesla is. There are people that don't know EV cars are like a thing. There are people that have never. I went in my second Tesla ride ever 2 weeks ago. Ever. And I'm 25, and I've been in a Tesla twice. Right? So like listening to the Wall Street people's arguments, it reminded me how big the world is and why advertising actually happens. I saw this stat today. There's 7 late night shows, like with Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and all that stuff. They made $400 million of advertising last year. Almost $500 million of advertising revenue was placed into like 7 late night TV shows. So advertising is a very big industry. There are people that don't know you exist, which is why you advertise in the first place, which is why impressions are the most competitive thing in the planet in order to be able to get, because that is the basis for how we measure advertising. That's how we measure reach. That's how we measure distribution. And so I think if you're going to create content to be able to get more and more impressions, it's really important to define what is the content you're making and how can you consistently create it over and over and over again as many ways as possible in order to maximize the level of impressions. Because on the social media platforms that exist today, if you are not constantly posting, you will not get impressions. You're just not going to get that much exposure and distribution, which is the bull case for Audia. You don't have to post 17,000 times. You could post once and get 17,000 impressions because we don't have that much content. We don't have that many users. We don't have the supply. We have the supply and demand imbalance that Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube don't have because they are filled with billions of pieces of content every single minute. And that's where we get into the conversation around business and impressions. I think there will be many, many businesses across the world that use Audia as a marketing tool over the next 5 years, if we're able to build this company the way I think we can, because they are going to get a disproportionate amount of impressions on their content. So imagine, you're Bank of America and you want to market your bank by appealing to people who don't have financial literacy, right? Who are illiterate when it comes to financial topics. And you make, let's say you make 20 podcasts, 20 episodes on, taxes and the loopholes and all this stuff, right? You do a bunch of financial stuff like that. What if you could be Bank of America and say, look, we post on Instagram every single day. We have 10,000 posts on Instagram. We're constantly in the feed on people on Instagram. Therefore, we're getting discovered. Our brand is growing, our awareness. We're getting users and people are making accounts, all that stuff. What if, let's use SoFi. SoFi is a fintech, and it's a more a new bank that actually embraces digital and social advertising. Imagine SoFi said, we're going to create 1,000 pieces of audio content that are hyper specific around financial literacy, around taxes, around building a business, around how to get mortgages and loans, around the student loan process, around all this different type of stuff, right? They just keep finding ideas to talk about. They interview all these industry leaders and experts, all this stuff. They have 1,000 pieces of audio content. What happens, right? This is where shit gets fun. This is the cool part about building a startup, because you get to really imagine these things at scale, and this is what motivates you to keep going. What happens when SoFi is like, oh, here's this new platform called Audia. We can post 1,000 pieces of audio content. And because there's not that much content on the platform, but the platform's growing, they're going to give those 1,000 pieces of audio content way more impressions than Spotify would ever give, than Apple would ever give, and that YouTube would ever give. That means SoFi is going to get more brand awareness. SoFi is going to get more, the numbers don't lie. There are ideas on the platform that have 40,000 impressions. That means 40,000 times they were seen. When you give that to a corporation, when you give that to a financial institution, when you give that to a business, those are real numbers, right? And then if it converts in terms of people start clicking on the link in your bio because they listened to a 10-minute piece of content and now they want to sign up for an account, and you just got a customer acquisition cost of basically nothing because of this dinky little audio platform that showed your content to more people over something like Spotify, that is when companies are going to start to really take us seriously. And I think, that's the fun part, because there are so many people on LinkedIn that are trying to be thought leaders and business consultants and all this stuff. And, LinkedIn's just, it's a good platform, but that type of content, business content, put in motivational content, it needs to be more long form than short form. It's why LinkedIn's algorithm rewards long form articles, long form paragraphs, and a captivating hook, and you get people to click see more and they keep reading, because LinkedIn wants you to stay on the platform and actually get value out of what you read. They don't want you to just see a 280 character comment and then scroll away from it, right? Because what is LinkedIn's objective? They want businesses to get business results from the 700 million member community that they've created. So when you are scrolling on LinkedIn, they want you to eventually click on something where you are actually going to follow up on, especially when it comes to B2B advertising. So if you're, a project manager and you want to incorporate some type of software into your startup that makes life more easier for you, and you see an advertisement for a startup, they want you to click it and consume it. When you see a 17 paragraph explanation of why this software changed my life, they want you to read that, and they want you to click on the person's profile. They want you to send them a message or click on the link in their bio and say, hey, I'm interested in a sales call. Can we actually talk? Can you tell me about your product? businesses and corporations need awareness in order to get people to care about their stuff. And just like LinkedIn has created short form video and long form articles to be able to drive attention and ultimately leads for businesses, what if Audia could do that for audio? And why is that the best case? Because again, business and motivational content, which is like the world of this 800 million member community on LinkedIn, is meant to be more meaningful. And in order to get the meaningfulness from that content, it needs to be consumed in a long format. It can't be these short form dopamine hits. That doesn't lead to business results. That doesn't lead to wanting to talk to the CTO of a company. And so and again, caveat, it can lead to business results. It's just not the most optimal, right? It's not literally the thing that's going to change your business overnight. And so my thing is like, well, if Audia is a long form audio platform, and when I say long form, I mean 7 to 15 minutes, and you could create thousands of pieces of content around your business in audio format, and we've got people scrolling through those feeds, and those thumbnails and titles are interesting enough for them to click on those pieces of content, and then they click on it, and then they start consuming the audio that you have created, and then they decide to develop a business relationship. Companies and corporations around the world are going to start seeing Audia as a behemoth in terms of marketing their businesses. Just an audio format. That's it. That's what we're talking about here. We're just talking about how do we get things popping in a different format, and that format happens to be audio. I think that shit could be big. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the chat, but that is kind of my thesis here on how audio can get discovered. How long have we been doing this? We've been doing this for 40 minutes off the dome. There we go. Time to advertising Congo. Define PMing, pushing to success for others by holding them accountable. Never leave the story or objectives open-ended. Always have a due date. Yep, I agree. Why not do that in the slack time work on your startup? Well, see, guys, the problem is you've got to actually be motivated to build the startup, even if you're a product manager, and that's the hard part. Showcat has a question for me. The question from Showcat is, why are you so hot? Look, I've been trying to figure out the answer to this question my whole life, to be honest. I really have. I've analyzed it from multiple perspectives. I just think there's something about me that's like, I think that even if I lived in Antarctica, I would still be extremely hot, because I'm me, and it's just there's something about me that's hot, Now, granted, the way I define hot is not necessarily through physical looks. I define hot as, when you come across that person, you're like, damn, that's hot. That person's hot shit. They're spitting hot fire, right? So I define it in the context of personality. And so, at the end of the day, you got to have a personality, I think, that's hot enough to be able to develop some attention. And the reason I have that personality, honestly, to not joke anymore, the reason I think I have that personality is because I really, really do like performing, and I like being on stage, and I like getting my message out there. And there's no a snake oil salesman incentive structure for why I like performing. Like, I just love the heat of the moment, whether it's 4 people, 15 people. That's why in the morning streams, when like 250 people show up, it's like, holy crap! Like, people actually, I just never take that for granted, because I love performing, and I don't have anything to sell. I really don't. It's no course, nothing like that, right? So the fun part is performing, and that's why it's fun to do this. Climate change level hotness. Sweating out of annoyance. I love it. Okay, so we're gonna conclude this with final couple things, right? Impressions are the basis for discovery. Discovery is the basis for distribution. Distribution comes when people actually see you in their feed. If you're a creator and you're hearing this, you need to get impressions. If you're not getting impressions, you're not getting discovered. And so Audia is going to be a platform. This is really cool, because either in the next 5 years, I'm going to be a fucking genius and it's going to be right, and you're going to watch these videos and be like, holy shit, that guy, he really said what was going to happen and it happened. Or we're going to look back on these videos and be like, well, he was screaming to 30 people on a green field talking about how his thing was going to be big and it didn't end up happening. So it's going to be one or the other. I think there's going to be millions of creators and businesses across the world that once they know about Audia are going to be like, there is outsized levels of distribution on this platform. We need to fucking post as much as we can. And as a result of that, we are going to create the network effects that establish Audia to become a very big company and either get bought out one day by one of the big guys or we go all the way. And that's the level of big dreaming I am doing at this age, because there is no reason why that can't happen. There is every reason why that will not happen. There is no reason why that can't happen. And the fact that we're enabling, again, if you listen to the core logic of what I said over the past 40 minutes, I don't think I'm wrong. I do not think I'm wrong about this. And if I was wrong, I would admit I'm wrong. Like, I'm not going to act like I'm right when I'm wrong. Like, I do debate. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The audio platforms are not giving impressions. Go into their back-end analytics. There's no fucking impressions. There's just this. It doesn't exist. We are. We need to figure out how to tell creators that more impressions means more discovery, means more distribution. I talked to a guy from an investment fund who analyzed Spotify's business for 3 years, and he realized that the reason they bought exclusives is because they're not getting user-generated content to be able to build their advertising business. That's why they bought exclusive. Exclusives aren't paying the bills, so now they're trying to re-up the advertising business, but they're in a tough position because the record labels own so much. Like, there are so many structural problems with the big guys that give us enough time to be able to build this out. We just need to scale the marketing, and if we do that, it is a no-brainer that a company like SoFi decides, we should be posting a crap ton of content on this platform because there's outsized reach. It's a no-brainer that a musician is like, my new song is not going anywhere on Spotify. Let me try posting it on Audia and see what happens. It is a no-brainer that podcaster that's getting 5 downloads every week on Spotify is like, let me put it on Audia and see that I'm getting 5,000 impressions. Maybe I'm still getting only 5 listens, but at least I got shown to 5,000 people, which means if I adjust the way I'm presenting my content, maybe I will get more than 5 listens and get 7,000 impressions. But 7,000 people even knowing you exist for a millisecond is better than 0. And that's what's currently happening in the audio space. All right. Having said that, that is our keynote presentation for today. Let me see the final comments. The cure to existential anxiety is not to waste time. Do what you think is not a waste of time. I agree. Besides an algorithm, how else does Audia enable creators to get more impressions? Is there another way? No, it's algorithmic because every platform is algorithmic. Impression is just you show up in the feed. That's it. That's an impression. So there's 2 models. Either you pay for that, right? There's an advertising model. That's how these companies become behemoths. They charge people to get impressions. Or you organically show up in the feed because an algorithm, that's it, an algorithm decides to show you in that feed. My basic thesis is that all the other platforms' algorithms kind of suck at giving you impressions, particularly in the audio space, right? Video space is decent, but audio space, it's non-existent. And if we create that for the audio space, then we're going to win. Do a cartwheel for the algo. No, I'm not doing a fucking cartwheel. You guys are crazy. I don't know how to do a cartwheel or a backflip. Maybe one day I'll learn how to do it. All right, guys, that's it. We will be back tomorrow, Saturday. We are keeping this going every single day of the week. Exciting. We're going to have much more stuff to talk about. If you guys want me to talk about more things, put them in the description. Again, the goal of this, really, I've said it already, but the goal of this is to create a lot of short form content from these long form keynotes, because we figured out this is the best way for me to kind of get into my zone when it comes to talking and speaking about Audia and all the things I want to speak about. And as a result of that, that's why we're doing it. So I'm really appreciative that anyone shows up, because it gives me a little bit of a stage. I would still be doing this if 0 people showed up, because I would just imagine that there was a stage. But the fact that there's like 20, 30 people here, that means a lot to me. So thank you for that. We'll see you tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend. Also, I probably got to plug SoFi Weekly and Pouncer Weekly tonight. So why not? Yeah, those 2 are tonight. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a great day. Enjoy your life. Eat something good tonight. It's Friday. I'm not doing a cartwheel. Not today. And I'll see you tonight and tomorrow. Bye-bye.